Oh, the humanity! Look at this wreckage. It's like a graveyard of plants, of garlic, and just... So what's going on right there is this whole chop and drop thing, this slash mulch thing that we do. I was going to show you my cutter, but I don't. I left it over there. Anyway, so the plants that are growing in here, I harvest a lot of these, but I also do a lot of chop and drop with them in this area. And I'm forming really dense, thick layers of just self-mulched foliage. And then I come back and just plant right into that. So you can tell this is like a pretty darn thick, this bed, this area now, has such dense, rich foliage from all the fertility that this polyculture and constant cover and lots of mulch produce, that it produces really dense foliage. And I chop that around this time of year. I chopped it around the salsify flowers, so those will flower and self-sow. And I left some of this garlic and the blue chives because I'm going to eat those. And right in there is an artichoke betony, a crone. So those are just wandering around in here too. You know, Tate, let's get real close and personal with that. What's that look like? Oh, and there's some more of that camas there too. This little area, I didn't chop and drop that or anything. But there's, you know, the crone. Well, let's see if I can get right in on the roots. So the root area in there, the crone leaves and the chives and all that, there's a lot of just, I mean, there's no grasses in there. So all those plants together have tag teamed and formed a little guild that are helping them live. And they're not getting enough space that they're going to be at their full potential, but they're getting enough space that, I mean, for wild plants, it's going to be pretty harvestable. And if I wanted to crank up the volume on any of those, I would just chop and drop or harvest around them and thin out. And that would size up to, you know, to a garden-sized plant. Same with all of these things in here, you know. If I wanted to size up some of these clumps of garlic, I'd pick the biggest garlic, thin them out, and just leave the biggest one, and chop and drop around it real quick, and they'd size up. And if I'm eating all the rest of the garlic, and that's my work, you know, my work in the garden is just eating. I've eliminated all the work except eating. So I'm real super lazy. So I've been getting my students, when they come here, we've been practicing some chop and drops just so they can get an idea using the comma. If they've never used a comma before. Here's some where I actually did have a bit of leftover garlic from last year that had gone bad, quite a lot actually. And so I did mulch over some of that one with that because that pile wasn't quite big enough. But there's, talk about garlic, I mean, there's salsify and garlic plenty right through there. Tons of both of those crones going on underneath. Here's another slash mulch pile. There's a small one right there that's going to be squash. Here's another big one for corn. Look at the size of these too, just doing some observation. One of the things about this kind of technique with chop and drop and slash mulch is we're not trying to dominate 100%. We're trying to give the plants what they need. The plants we want, the plants that want to eat, enough room to survive. So this is enough of a space that when I plant my corn directly into that, I'm not going to dig that or anything. I'm just going to poke down with my finger and put a corn in there, you know, 4 of them. So yeah, another big clump of salsify in there, more salsify, Turkish rocket, a huge Turkish rocket. Another thing here, I think that one's going to be corn again. Another thing for corn there, at about 6-foot centers. Another one over there. And this is probably about what, like the you know, European colonizer dudes were talking about when they were talking about how the Native Americans are tending the other plants in the garden and giving them as much love as they are to their crop plants, corn, beans, and squash. Because if they're doing it right, you know, it's just a waste of energy And waste good medicine and food to weed all those out. And here I am with my friend, the Turkish rocket. It's a lovely vegetable. Its bright yellow flowers are very popular with beneficial insects. So I'm gonna show it lots of love by murdering it right now in front of you. My weapon of friendliness of the plant, and give it a yank. And I'm gonna chop and drop it because I already harvested all of the, I'm gonna chop it up just a little bit to pile it better. I already harvested that plant for the season. Oh, there's lots of dandelion in there too. And I recently did a thing about blanched dandelions being the best vegetable, and growing in underneath there's this beautiful dandelion that's still pretty blanched and white. That's gonna be good to eat. So looking in there, in next to the oregano, there's the oregano roots. They're just kind of laying down. Here's some oregano, and there's lots. There's the dandelion, but in between, there's lots of bare space. I mean, these are almost, look at that, how much bare soil there was underneath or around that Turkish rocket. I told you the Turkish rocket was allelopathic to grasses, and it's produced this huge fortress zone around it. I mean, this isn't surprising at all. Now there's more of the Turkish rocket. If I pull that, I just cut off the leaves. You can see this ring around the rosy. It's ring around the Turkish rocket, where it's not producing anything. This is a perennial plant, so I just pruned it, and that is gonna strongly root prune this too. It's gonna have root dieback because I just chopped and dropped it. So it's gonna take some while to recover. And right here is now a huge, thick mulch pile that I made in about seconds. Seriously, if that were a hole, if I had just dug that hole, it would have taken me like literally 7 or 8 minutes to dig a hole that size. And I just produced an area for planting a bed for my corn in less time, in like a small fraction of the amount of time that it would have taken me to dig that hole. And it was so much easier. Man, I'm so lazy. Oh yeah, there's one more thing I wanted to say. What I just did was creating my garden bed for the season. By the end of season, this whole thing is going to be covered with, on top of all of these alliums you're seeing, the chives, the onions, the tons of garlic. Some of this garlic is going to size up to be grocery store sized commercial bulbs that I never planted, never weeded other than what I just showed you, and never watered, never tended in any way. Yet they're super productive. And just taking a look into this system here, almost everything you're seeing is not grass. It's almost all edible biomass. And I've been eating a ton of it, we've been eating a ton of it, and there's still so much left. Here, I'm getting ready to put in my garden for the season, and there's 100 times more food than 2 people and their friends can eat right here in this garden already. Look here at this sweet little spot. Here's a big clump of nice salsify, and there's a Turkish rocket, oregano, a massive clump of onions. Man, those are some really huge ones. Those are Egyptian walking onions, but they're huge. When they get to that size, I start laying them down once they've sized up and before they start to divide, and that's going to form. It's going to go dormant and form a storage onion for me. Stalks. Let's just look. I'm curious. What's the soil looking like underneath all this for a thing that's never been fertilized? Here's a little bit of grass. I'm going to pull it because I want to see what it's like in there. So yeah, let's kind of grab those. So just underneath here, this soil is looking gorgeous for soil that has never been fertilized, that's never been dug or anything.